Only the finest in tomato-based entertainment.
3 tomatoes are walking down the street. Papa tomato, mama tomato, and baby tomato.
Plain Ketchup presents.
Starring Lindsay Hinkle and Jamie Nelson.
So this is plain ketchup, is it? I prefer something with a little more kick.
Everybody's favorite condiment-themed entertainment podcast.
Put some hot sauce on my burrito, baby!
Hot sauce.
Nobody puts ketchup on a hot dog.
You're listening to Hot Sauce on PlainKetchupPodcast.com. I'm Jamie Nelson, and with me, my co-host, Lindsay Hinkle. Hiya, Lindsay.
Hey, Jamie.
You sound a little down in the dumps.
I know, I did that because I thought it would amuse me, and it did. Firefly. So I recently started watching it from the beginning for the first time.
Oh, for the first time?
For the first time. I mean, like, I've watched bits of it here and there with you.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad and I sat down last weekend, and we actually watched the first 2 episodes from the beginning.
Wow.
I'm sorry, but the first episode is really slow.
Did you know that the first episode did not air first? That's because they shot that episode and realized it was too slow. So they ended up making the second episode, actually the first episode, and they aired the first episode at the very end once the show got canceled.
Well, good fucking call, because that episode was awful.
Tell us how you really feel.
You know, it's finals, and so for my rhetoric of religion class, we have to write an 8 to 12 page paper analyzing a rhetorical text with religious elements. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, I like Buffy. Demons are kind of a religious symbol that it's rhetorical text. So I ended up focusing on Nathan Fillion's character in Buffy. So I'm watching the first episode that character is in to find a scene to analyze. And the first scene that he's in, where you find out that he's like not actually a priest and in the priest garbs and stuff, I'm like, oh my god, this guy's so creepy. Oh my god, I don't think I could write this paper. I don't know what was going on with me, but I started crying. I was like, I cannot do this. This guy scares me so bad.
You did not start crying.
I did. You can ask my mother. It was awful. It was so bad. And I tried to tell my friends, I'm like, so I was working on my paper this weekend and I started crying. And they're like, oh, I know, final stress is really rough. I'm like, no.
I was watching Buffy.
By the time this paper's over and I'm done watching this one scene over and over and over, I'm not going to want to see Nathan Fillion again for like 6 months. I'm not even going to be able to watch 2 Guys and a Girl.
Oh, that's a shame. No Castle for you?
No Castle. I've never watched Castle.
It's not bad. See, it's not Firefly. Speaking of Firefly, who do we have in our waiting room?
I believe we have PJ Shapiro here.
Here's a clip of his music.
Breaking strings feels like breaking free. Greater rings unbound. Causal chains that I can't see. They will weigh down, weigh me down.
With me in the Skype studio today, I have PJ Shapiro. Hi, PJ.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. Do you want to introduce yourself and your art?
I am, God help me, a singer-songwriter. Yeah, I know. It's a really bad infestation that the world has of us, but what are we going to do?
You probably don't know how I discovered your music.
Actually, I suspect I do. I suspect it was the most successful recording I have made by a long shot, which was a cover of a song called Ballad of Serenity, written by Joss Whedon.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep. And that was the theme song to the late, great, completely doomed show Firefly, which might be the best television show ever made. I'm not sure.
I can't really argue with that.
So I probably should explain this. The show was supposed to run for, what was it, 5 years or something?
Oh, I don't know.
And it, of course, was canceled after 13 episodes.
Yeah.
Not all of which even aired. So Fox, in its wisdom, canceled the show. After that, there was this fan community, which is how I ended up doing the cover of Ballad of Serenity that you heard. I was on a fan board called Firefly Fans, and I had some friends who I was chatting with there regularly, and they knew I was a musician. So one of them kind of said to me, I'd like to hear your version of that. And I said, okay. And I sat down at my kitchen table and recorded in, I don't know, a couple minutes with a little, digital recorder sitting on the table, nothing fancy. That was where the Frankensteinian monster was born.
Do you know how many downloads you got from that, or?
No idea. I don't. The thing is that off of my site where it's originally posted and still there in the original link, thousands, which is way more than anything else I've ever done. But it's also up there. It's gotten cross posted at all kinds of places, and of course all these pirate MP3 sites. All the spiders come and get it and put it up on these random sites. So I have no idea how the thing is proliferated. And since I have no actual legal rights to it whatsoever,
Right.
I don't want to know.
Right.
But anyway, so what happened with the show was it got canceled and the fans were distraught. So eventually, there was enough fan support to commercially, allegedly justify making a movie, which if they did, the issue being that movie then crammed several years worth of plot into 2 hours, which is a very bittersweet thing. It was nice to know how it all sort of, came out, all the threads that were sort of being built slowly in the show. But it was also, I think, ultimately why that movie was not terribly accessible to people who were not already fans.
Who's your favorite character in Firefly?
I guess sort of the sentimental favorite would be Kaylee.
Oh my God, Kaylee. She's so cute.
But, I mean, not that they're my children, but it's like picking among your children. I don't think I could really, who's got the best line at any given moment, which is just about anybody, which is, sort of the hallmark of the writing on that show.
Yeah, and they all sort of have a different brand of humor, so it's sort of hard to say like one person necessarily is like a comic relief because they're all sort of funny in their same way.
And I guess it depends on what kind of humor you like the best.
I suppose so. However, I do like Wash because he is sort of the happy-go-lucky, funny one.
Right. I remember actually I went to an advanced screening of Serenity in Boston at the Boston Common Theater. So I remember going to that, and the Wash there was actually a moment in that movie where the entire audience was like massively traumatized all at once.
Yes, definitely agree. I mean, I saw it in a movie theater and there were probably 6 people in the theater. So it was a little bit of a different experience, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear an entire room spontaneously gasp, like not sound effect, not ironic, not everybody really did.
Yeah. I guess part of the success of that show being science fiction is that it made it more accessible in terms of like character. Like you cared more for the characters in the show than you do in a lot of other science fiction.
There are so many different characters that are, I mean, they're just very personable characters, and you'll find somebody to love.
Although I have to admit, the first time I saw Firefly, before the beginning credits, there'd only been about maybe 3 or 4 characters. And when the beginning credits start up and there's 9 characters see the credits, and I was like, 6, 7. I was like, why does it keep going? Why are there so many people?
Why are you counting?
Because I wanted to know how many people I would have to keep track of.
I have never met anyone else who would count how many people are in the opening sequence because they want to know how many characters they have to keep track of. I think this is a specifically Jamie phenomenon.
I think it stems from being a writer and getting yelled at a lot for having too many characters in my stories.
So you're like, why can he do it, but I can't?
Exactly. And the answer to that is simply because he's Joss.
Well, yeah. I mean, he can do whatever he wants and people eat it up. Because a lot of science fiction, I think, relies very heavily on the science fiction aspect of it and doesn't necessarily flesh out the characters the way that Firefly does.
A lot of other science fiction tends to focus a lot on like plot and things like that.
Well, it depends. I mean, there's well-written science fiction and poorly written. Firefly is way up there in the well-written category, but it also, it's not that the plots aren't good.
Right.
I'm kind of a sucker for space westerns anyway.
How many are there?
Well, okay, there was a cartoon called Tales of the Galaxy Rangers, which was hysterical. I mean, it wasn't like intentionally funny, but they sort of were winking at the whole Western genre, because every episode, at least as I recall, it's been years since I've watched it, but they would basically rip off a famous Western very obviously. And it was great fun. But, it's funny because the stuff that I grew up on, a lot of them, yeah, okay, they weren't terribly well written. They were rushed. They were not produced with any money whatsoever. Tom Baker, Doctor Who, for instance. Even the original Star Trek, which, okay, they spent a lot of money, but even as a kid, it looked kind of cheesy. It doesn't have to be good, especially when there wasn't nearly the variety or the outlets to see that stuff. So when you did find it, you kind of would latch on just because, hey, this is actual science fiction. I'm a little surprised right now, actually, because science fiction is so prevalent in our culture, and yet this should be sort of a golden age, and from what I can tell, it really isn't. There just aren't. I don't see a lot of things that strike me as having legs for years and years and years. It's funny. It's the same thing with music, actually, where there's so much stuff out there, and the audience is sort of so balkanized and segmented. You don't have necessarily as much of a common culture. Everybody's off doing. They're sort of split into their own things, and that's not necessarily bad, but it's you can't immediately have common ground. You can't assume that people have seen things.
And I guess that's part of why TV is struggling over the internet, is because everyone has gone so niche now that the numbers of like someone watching a television show, it's not as high as it used to be in order for it to be successful. Because if you have the numbers that it used to be, I mean like everybody would have to be watching it. But now there's just so much stuff that's fighting for your attention that it's divided across the board.
But it's also the problem we have now, which is, it's a great problem to have. Again, parallels with music. Is that with this proliferation of there's so much stuff out there, it's very hard to wade through. You can't listen to just getting the connection between the sort of the creators and the audience. That's the challenge. And when there's a million different things out there, both as a creator and as a consumer of media, the hardest thing is finding the needle in the haystack, essentially.
Have you done anything to sort of be a noticeable needle?
The Ballad of Serenity cover was far and away, like I said, the most noticeable thing I've ever done. I think that's the thing I have found the most challenging, which is, self-promotion. I'm not good at it. I don't like it.
I think that means you're a true artist.
I don't think they're correlated one way or the other. I might just be lazy. The things that make you a good promoter are not necessarily the things that make you a good performer or a good musician.
Because I do a lot of artistic stuff, but I'm also, my day job, I'm a publicist for other people. So I definitely find that I think it's different parts of the brain.
But I bet that gives you an interesting perspective when you see something and you go, I see your marketing publicist tricks there. This is probably no good.
Yes, yeah.
It's funny, actually. I used to produce a music podcast, Something Live, which is still up at somethinglive.net. One of the things I do is I mix live sound. And I work at this place called the Cantab Lounge in Cambridge, Mass. at the open mic. And I've been there for more years than I'd like to think about. Let's put it this way. The show just celebrated its 20th anniversary, and I've been there for well over half of its run. So what I did is I recorded straight off the board everybody I could get permission from, essentially, and put together a podcast of, some of those tracks. And then I'd have guests and interview people and have them play live music, kind of like what you're doing, as a short segment in the middle of every show. I've always sort of been peripherally, in the sights of all these ambitious, up and coming musicians who are, for the most part, marketing themselves or working with, semi-professional, non-professional marketing people. Making the show put me more in the, the stream of marketing, the people who are trying to get booked and the people who are trying to get promoted. I started getting, the various materials from people, and that was one of the more depressing parts of the job. Just, when somebody who's really sincere and really earnest and is really trying, and they, will try and put a CD into my hands at a show, and it's like the host of the show, who actually is the guy who books it, I just twiddle knobs. He has a tough time with it. You sort of nod and smile and you take the product, but you can't listen to all the stuff that comes your way. And then, there seems to be this sort of inverse correlation sometimes between how aggressive and how slick is the marketing and, what's under that wrapper. And I don't want to sound like, I'm a snob. Oh, nothing that's popular is good, because that's certainly not true. It's just hard to, like I said, it's hard to find the stuff that isn't, being supported by these various large machines.
Yeah, the internet has definitely tried to level the playing field, but it's also made the playing field really, really big.
The thing one of the things that amuses the hell out of me is, we do live in the future.
Where's our flying cars?
Exactly. Well, not that one. That's a good one too. But as the technology has gotten better, the quality, actual technical quality, just of audio. I mean, a lot of people are finding music and performers via YouTube. The audio quality on most video recordings is god awful.
Yeah.
And iPods as the sort of dominant medium, I think it's hilarious because, of course, MP3s are not, they're heavily compressed, and I just think it's really funny that sort of our technology is getting better, and yet the actual audio quality seems to be going in reverse. Although, thank God, we're done with cassettes.
I guess we just really, really value convenience, and we just don't value quality anymore, which is sad.
Yes, well, I think that goes for pretty much anything, including food and clothes.
Yeah, I do find that weird too, that we went to records to CDs to MP3s.
Well, records to CDs records to cassettes to CDs was basically an uphill climb. But then we just teetered off the cliff into MP3s. Because there are people who really love LPs, and I understand that, but digital is the way to go. It's just that the early CDs, when CDs were new and dinosaurs roamed the earth, the people making this stuff didn't really understand the technology yet, so things are very poorly mastered and very, not equalized particularly well. But I just think it's funny, again, the sort of the inconvenience that people will put up with and create, and they don't even, most people can't hear the difference and don't care.
You do live sound, which reminds me of a story. I went to a trade show once for work, and one of my authors shows up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm running the board for a Broadway musical tonight, and we're closing. It's our last night." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. What is it?" And he said, "Well, it's this musical called An Evening Without Monty Python." And I was like, "Oh my God, is that the one with Alan Tudyk?" And he goes, "Yeah, you want to come? I can get you in." I was like, "Definitely." I was like, "Can I meet Alan Tudyk?" And he's like, "Sure." And I was like, "Awesome."
Score.
Yeah, so I had all these things in my head that, as you do, that you're going to say. And then, of course, you walk up and you have everything just dumps out of your brain and you just become a babbling idiot. And I was like, you're my favorite actor?
Yeah, actually, the screening I was at of Serenity, Morena Baccarin and Sean Marr were there.
Nice.
And so after the movie, even though everybody was like traumatized, they were signing autographs and whatnot. And I remember taking a photo for a friend of mine as he was, meeting briefly with, talking to Morena, and just like, I was just totally speechless at the moment,
It's funny the way your brain works when that happens.
Although that one, part fanboy, part just, primate.
I interviewed Hanson back in 2008. They're like saying hi to me, and I'm just like staring at them because I may be 22 years old at this point in time, but this is the first time I've ever like met them. And I'm just like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that my hair looks this bad today." And I just completely blanked, and all I could think about was my hair. Like, looking at the pictures, all I could think about is my hair still.
This is appropriate for a band that was known for having girly hair.
This is true. I guess I never looked at it this way. Thank you for reframing that for me.
So I think we're hitting the 25-minute mark. Where can people find you online?
Well, after I've gotten through with slagging MP3s, you can get them at iTunes. You can also find CDs at a site called CD Baby. I think Amazon still has 1 or 2 copies left.
And the album is I Know What You're Made Of?
Unfortunately, it's kind of old right now. I mean, it's always going to be old.
But it's still good.
Oh, thanks so much. But I've been working on a new one continuously for the last 10 years, and I've reached the point where I don't care enough that, so I can finally release something. So I should have something out relatively soon. My website is pjshapiro.com, and my music podcast, which is all up on, it's at somethinglive.net, and you can hear some stuff of mine there. I actually did an episode where I was the guest and I interviewed myself.
Oh, did you?
Yes, which was a surprising amount of fun.
So did you like do sort of slightly different personalities or moods or anything?
Well, what I did is I did two separate tracks. I recorded it in two different takes. I was, in a lot of ways, I was sort of mocking the whole form, the whole, everything is a talk show, and the whole, get on, plug the product, do, tell the funny story, play the song, get off.
Right.
That is the prevalent way to do things, but not necessarily the best. So yeah, pjshapiro.com, somethinglive.net. You can find my stuff on iTunes. You can find my stuff at cdbaby.com. I'm on a whole bunch of digital download sites that are not iTunes, which you are also free to use. And if you want to find my cover of Ballad of Serenity, the original link would be on my site at pjshapiro.com. And it's not visible on the page. You actually have to sort of go through a search engine to find it. But if you type Ballad of Serenity into Google, it will actually come up.
Without your name?
It would help to use my name, and you'd have to go maybe a page down to find it without my name. But yeah, it'll eventually be up there.
That's good SEO, sir.
Yeah, well, it's totally accidental.
Are you on Facebook and Twitter?
I am. I'm on Twitter as PJ Shapiro, and Facebook. I have a personal page and a musician page, and I still don't really understand the difference. And again, as PJ Shapiro. So if you're searching through those, then you want the one with the picture of the bearded kind of scary guy. That's me. There are several PJ Shapiros, one of whom is a famous entertainment lawyer.
Oh, really?
Who is not me.
Huh. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, and have a good night.
You too.
Stuck in time, a predetermined plotted line, a border fence and a warning sign, but not enough for me. Run into a new mosaic that's woven through a looser frame than the weaver knew, just loose enough for me. Strings feels like breaking free. Greater rings unbound, causal chains that I can't see. They will weigh down, weigh me down. Problem raised, I've been off the map for days. Symbols spread into wide arrays, not clear enough for me. Fly or fall, my only chance is to risk it all. The graceful curves that support this wall, they're strong enough for me. Breaking strings feels like breaking free. Greater rings unbound, causal chains that I can't see. They will weigh me down, weigh me down. Distance rose, lost and closed. Thorns and bows, where it goes, where it goes. go. Breaking strings feels like breaking free. Greater rings unbound. Causal chains that I can't see. They will weigh me down. Weigh me down. Weigh me down. Weigh me down.
This has been Hot Sauce, brought to you by PlainKetchupPodcast.com. Please subscribe, rate, and comment on iTunes. Check back every Monday for a new celebrity guest interview. You may also want to check out our hilarious Wednesday videos on youtube.com/PlainKetchup. That's PLAINKETCHUP. Sign up for our newsletter on PlainKetchupPodcast.com to be entered into our monthly drawings. We give away t-shirts, music, stickers, and more from our guests. Please like us on Facebook.com/PlainKetchup and follow us on Twitter @PlainKetchup. Don't forget to support this project by buying Plain Ketchup swag at our Cafe Press store. Have a question? Email Jamie and Lindsay at gmail.com. That's JAIME and LINDSEY @gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay saucy.
I don't know. I have a soft spot for a manly man with a girl's name. It's really gruff and manly. And, like, it's kind of funny how manly he is. And bread and potatoes, or meat and potatoes, I don't know what the saying is.
Bread and potato.
I'm babysitting for my friend's kids, and her son does not like bread or potatoes. So if she said that if he won't get up in the morning and won't get ready for school, I should just threaten to that if he doesn't get ready, he's going to have potatoes for breakfast or bread for breakfast. And then he'll get ready because he doesn't want to eat bread or potatoes.